Do you find yourself engaged in negative self-talk at times? Do you find yourself going in a downward spiral in thoughts where you don't want to be? Do you sometimes say to yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm not intelligent enough, I'm not sexy enough? If you do, you're not alone. Evolution gave us negative self-talk as a tool to protect ourselves from dangers. Somehow along the way, it became our narrative. So today I'm going to give you 7 practical ways derived from science and ancient wisdom to help you manage and hopefully end negative self-talk. So join me on the journey today. Obstinate are the shackles, and my heart aches when I try to break them. Freedom is all I want, but to hope for it, I feel ashamed. I'm certain that priceless wealth is in you, and that you are my best friend. But I have not the heart to sweep away the tinsel that fills my room. The shroud that covers me is a shroud of dust and death. I hate it, yet hug it in love. My debts are large, my failures great, my shame secret and heavy. Yet when I come to ask for my good, I quake in fear, lest my prayer be granted. This is a poem called Obstinate Are the Shackles by one of my favorite poets, Rabindranath Tagore, in his small but very powerful book called The Heart of God. Interesting thing is Rabindranath Tagore never visited a temple, never read a scripture, never really felt that religion was his calling, but all his poetry is in fact prayers. And there's a lot of negative self-talk in some of these poems, like the one that I just read. When I first read this poem, I was going through my own negative self-talk in my head. You know, all of us do that. We go through life and things happen and the spiral downward starts to take hold. And it's very hard to come out of it. In fact, there's another wonderful book that I read, and because of COVID-19, some of my books are at another location, so I'll read this paragraph from my iPad. It's a book that you probably know about, written by Jen Sincero. She has the Badass series that you might know about, and this is about the issues of self-doubt and the doubting that we do in our own heads, and how to get past that to pursue your life's mission and your life's purpose and to really live a happy life. So she says, it never ceases to amaze me the precious time we spend chasing the squirrels around our brains, playing out our dramas, worrying about unwanted facial hair, seeking adoration, justifying our actions, complaining about slow internet connections, dissecting the lives of idiots, when we are sitting in the middle of a full-blown miracle that is happening right here, right now. We're on a planet that somehow knows how to rotate on its axis and follow a defined path while it hurtles through space. Our hearts beat. We can see. We have love, laughter, language, living rooms, computers, compassion, cars, fire, fingernails, flowers, music, medicine, mountains, muffins. If you haven't read her book, definitely get a copy. It's, like I said, it's called You're a Badass, How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life. So these squirrels that run through our head, it's a phenomenon that actually is deeply embedded in our brains. It's in our reptilian brains, and it's really all about self-preservation. The negative self-talk that we do is to prevent ourselves from falling into danger. But when it happens over a long period of time, it can really take a very serious toll on our physiological and psychological health. So there's a network in our brain called the default mode network. That's responsible for all of this chatter in our head. At least that's the assumption scientists have right now. There's a lot more work that needs to be done in that area. We all engage in this thought process which takes us down the paths that we should not be going into. And we all go there. You know, if we can't sleep at night and suddenly you start to feel a pain in the back, or your head starts to throb in a place as if like an artery is about to burst, you're sure you have an aneurysm or a tumor, right? Because that's just how our brain works. So this negative self-talk that can be so destructive psychologically and physiologically, what we want to really think about is, where does it come from? Why do we do it? And most importantly, what can we do to stop it? Now, when it does happen, as is human nature, hopefully it can be counteracted by something called positivity ratio, the 3-to-1 ratio. 3 positive thoughts, 1 negative thought. And hopefully we can get there by creating a diffusion of negative self-talk. So where does this negative self-talk come from? Well, there's a variety of theories around it, and these are again my sensibilities. I haven't tested them in a lab, so forgive me if they conflict with your opinions. The first is nurture, our belief systems. The way we were raised, the impressions we created, and there's a whole episode we'll do on our belief systems and what they do to us. That's one area. Our socioeconomic status, where we grow up, how we live, our childhood, what we had, what we didn't have, what people said to us, how they looked at us. You know, I grew up in a fairly humble home in India, and I can tell you that growing up in a 400 square foot home with 5 of us living there, and my friends having a television and us not having one, and to stand in their window for 3 hours every Sunday to watch the movie that came on a Sunday, that impression from the very early age never leaves you. So you start talking to yourself that I'm not good enough, my family's not good enough, for a variety of reasons. The third reason, which kind of links to that, is the expectations of others that we tend to start to believe in. And connected with that are the expectations we have for our own selves. So this concept of belief systems combined with socioeconomic status, with all sorts of other events that take place, bring negative talk. A gentleman named Jack Mesereau at Columbia University, he's done a lot of wonderful work on transformational learning. And one of the things he talks about are disorienting dilemmas. Disorienting dilemmas are precisely just that. Events that happen in our life that create a different arc. For example, child abuse, watching domestic abuse at home, especially if your mother gets hit, incarceration of a parent, suicide, the drug abuse that sometimes happens in different households. All these are things labeled under something called adverse childhood experiences. These are disorienting dilemmas from our childhood. They also happen in our adulthood, like loss of a job, getting fired, the economy coming to a standstill, COVID-19. These are all disorienting dilemmas that create negative self-talk. The grief and the fear, the anxiety, the stress, that's all attached to it. So it's a natural human process. There's nothing wrong with it, because it's a way to protect ourselves against danger. From the ice ages, when our brains really just wanted to protect ourselves to survive and for the species to continue, that's where this comes from. But again, over a long period of time, it's very disastrous. Why do we do it? Let's say these things happen, but why do we really engage in this? Several things, again, there could be possibilities. One is acceptance or validation. Now, how does negative self-talk turn into validation? Well, if I am not good enough, or if I don't fit in, like I mentioned in some of my episodes, that I had a real tough time in my childhood, and even when I arrived in the US when I was 23, not fitting in was a big challenge for me. So for acceptance purposes, we have this negative self-talk going on, and we adapt ourselves to say that we are not as good as we should be, but I need to be here in order to fit in so that I can get validated. It's a tough thing for people who haven't experienced it, but it is in fact something that we go through. Attention. If we need attention from people, we can go into negative self-talk. Not a very healthy habit, but again, it's for validation purposes. And validation is a very important aspect of human survival again. We need to be validated, but as an addiction, it can become a big challenge. Introspection is another way of negative self-talk. You know, if you read some of the scriptures from a variety of different religions. I grew up mostly following the Sikh religion. There are a lot of hymns that the Sikh gurus wrote in which they are self-deprecating. It's almost like negative self-talk, except it takes the form of humility. For example, I have so many sins in me that they cannot even fill the entire ocean, and you are the only savior. Now, the healthy way of that is to say, I surrender to you, so help me please, take me through this challenging time. And that becomes a prayer. But if this becomes a negative talk, that you're filled with sins and you have all these deficiencies, that can take you down another road which is not very healthy. We know very well what happens to celebrities, for example, right? They spend hours and years and hard work and sweat and blood getting to a place where society told them to get to, and when they get there they find out this is not it. What do we get? Drug overdoses, suicides, anxieties, depressions, plastic surgery, all kinds of things that they do to themselves. Now, this is not just for the people who are famous and wealthy, it's for all of us. I mean, we do all of that even when we don't have anything. The point is that this whole concept around what expectations are created for us and the expectations we create for ourselves lead us into that direction. Aloneness and loneliness, something that our society is plagued with, especially in colleges and universities. I have two daughters who went through their years of anxiety in colleges and universities, but 64% of college students report aloneness and loneliness and anxiety and depression. Now in 2019, there were 19.9 million students in colleges and universities. Let's say 20 million. Let's do the math. That's 13 million students going through loneliness, anxiety, and depression. And a lot of this comes from negative self-talk. And we keep going deep and deep into this morass, into this quicksand, that it makes it incredibly difficult for us to rise out of it. I could count many ways of physiological challenges that occur in our bodies or what this does to you. So I think you all get the point. Now let's get to the positive side of things, right? How do we end this? So Nelson Mandela said something really powerful, that man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden, but it can never be extinguished. The challenges he faced, right? This quote coming from a man who spent the best years of his life in prison and yet found a way for positivity. And most of it, if you read his biography, his autobiography, it's all about compassion. Just feeling that you need to be there to help others. That's how he found his meaning. So let's move forward to the action steps, and I'll give you 7 ways in which we can all try and end this negative self-talk. And it's an acronym. I used acronyms all my life in school and college to learn easily, and that was my way of retention. Before I move forward, there's something else coming to my mind, and that's an interview that I heard on NPR that George Clooney gave about his life. And he was asked, you were in your mid-30s, you didn't find success until much later in life, even though he had a lot of his family in Hollywood, in the industry. How did that happen? And he said something that has stuck with me, and I think a lot of other people have said it, but the way he said it stayed with me, was that failures are far more instructive than successes. Now, you could take the failures and turn them into negative self-talk, but you could also turn them into instructive experiences that launch you on a different path. So the acronym, the 7 items, are what I called I repair. So I'm repairing myself. The I, first I, is inspiration. Many ways to get inspirations. You can read books, you can go for walks, you can do forest bathing, you can sit and meditate. You could do whatever it is that inspires you. You could paint, you could jog, you could swim, you could surf, you could go skiing if it's the right time of the year. Obviously, there are restrictions in all of this today, but certainly activities you can do on your own. No one's going to stop you from taking a walk in a forest if you're near one. Follow the social distancing rules that we all have to follow today. So read, watch, listen to inspirational stuff. Music can be incredibly inspirational. Painting, writing, whatever it is that inspires you. That's the I. Now the repair part. The R is reflection. And that's having a journal or some place where you can actually write. And it's not just your thought process, because that default mode network, that can take you into the wrong place. So find a piece of paper or a journal in which you are reflecting every day on the good that you see, on the positive that you see, as small and insignificant as it may be. Just whatever it is. For example, if somehow you were about to stumble on the road and you didn't, that's something positive. We don't even pay attention to that when we stumble. But remembering to reflect on that, what didn't happen, that could have happened. Third, empathy. Now, empathy is separate and distinct from sympathy. Empathy is stronger than sympathy in a sense that you share the emotions and the perspectives of the person going through the suffering. It is between sympathy and compassion. Sympathy is really just care and concern, and you're not getting involved with emotions and perspectives. And compassion actually literally means suffering along with. So somewhere in between is empathy. What that does, it generates this amazingly good feelings inside you. They are not just physiological, because all kinds of wonderful stuff is being thrown into your blood, but psychologically, you start to feel good about yourself. And that starts to shift ever so slightly, ever so subtly, the way you think about life. Because you start to see others who are less fortunate than you, that you're actually helping out. And you suddenly start to find blessings and count the goodness that exists in your life. The fourth is perspiration. Now, perspiration is not like jogging. It's certainly good for you. Perspiring is good for you, right? But this is perspiration of your internal exercise that you have to do. Now, this could take the form of prayer or meditation or mindfulness, whatever it is that lets your brain exercise spirituality of some sort. You know, in Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, he talks about sharpening your sword, sharpening your edge. I forget how he actually phrases it, but I remember the intellectual edge, the spiritual edge, and the physical edge. What I'm talking about is the intellectual and the spiritual edge that is inside of you. The fifth is admiration. Now, this is an admiration in the form of love. There is a wonderful book called Love 2.0 that Barbara Fredrickson, who is one of our scientific advisory board members and an inspiration to me in many ways, she wrote. And these are concepts around love that is not as in, oh, I want to fall in love. This is love at every moment of your life. Finding ways to express your love to your kids, to your pets. You could stand in front of a tree and hug a tree. There's many people who do that. I've done that. And there's incredible love you can express in a variety of different ways. When you do that, something amazing happens into your hormonal system. All this good stuff called oxytocin and serotonin gets released because your brain can be fooled easily. It's actually not a very intelligent thing. It starts to think that you are actually experiencing that. It doesn't even know it's happening, but it starts to believe that because you're telling it to believe it. And your negative self-talk starts to end because some of those areas of the brain that are engaged in this negative self-talk start to get offline because the good things are now getting online. The I in repair is what I call I power. You can call it willpower, you can call it self-control. And one more of our scientific advisory board members, Roy Baumeister from the University of Queensland in Australia, he has researched willpower extensively. If you haven't read his book, Willpower, you should definitely get a copy. And you'll get all kinds of ideas about exercising that self-control at willpower. Very, very, very important stuff, and you can all do it. That's the beautiful part about it. We all have it in us. Have you ever seen a statue standing still in a mall for 3 hours at a time? That's willpower. If an insect sits on their face, a fly sits on their nose, you try to move them, they don't budge. There are examples like that in his book that he writes about, success stories of people who went through that, who turned out to be artists and musicians simply because they had self-control and willpower, and eventually the negative self-talk with that started to end. And finally, something that I'm very, very big on, you'll hear this all the time as a theme, is reaffirmation. Reaffirmation is different from reflection. This is where you actually say positive things to yourself. You can do that in your mind. You can do it in a self-compassion meditation. You can sit in a positive conversation with someone else, something called active constructive responding. You can also simply just talk to the higher power, the higher being, your higher self, the universe, whatever it is, reaffirmation of what's good in you and how you're going to exercise it. That's incredibly powerful. So I Repair is the acronym for trying to end your negative self-talk. As always, I want to leave you with a prompt, and I'll read this prompt. For the longest time, I have not exercised my I Repair. Whatever it is, you pick one out of those. It's time for me to use blank, just one of the I Repair items, and finally end the negative self-talk. As you can see, this is written on the screen. Fill in whatever appeals to you. And if nothing in I Repair appeals to you, find whatever it is that'll help you end your negative self-talk. I want to end with Tagore's quote, "What you are, you do not see. What you see is your shadow." Thank you for joining us today. Before you go, I'd like to tell you about two important things. First, a little bit about Karuna, and second, how you can be part of this journey with us. At Karuṇā, our mission is threefold. First, to support and empower youth and women who've suffered unspeakable abuse, neglect, abandonment, trafficking, and all of the traumas that life brings their way, unfortunately. Second, to support early childhood education in disadvantaged communities to help break the cycle of vicious poverty and abuse. And third, to fund well-being research through our esteemed scientific advisory board in areas that are disadvantaged. You can join us in one of 5 ways. They are listed on our website. So subscribe to this channel and subscribe to this website. You may volunteer with us, you can contribute, you can sponsor, you can be part of this journey to unleash compassion and make this world a happier place. Thank you.